topic which we are going to cover is functions of a group, groups and individual performance. Now it includes social facilitation and social loafing. By the end of the session, you will be able to know the important functions that takes place within the group, and you will be able to gain insight about how group situations can influence an individual's performance, and you will be able to understand the concepts and reasons behind social facilitation and know the factors behind social loafing and the techniques to counter it. Well, dear students, as we already covered the topic group's nature, types and its structure, I am very much sure you agree that groups play a vital role in our lives. Just try to list out the number of formal and informal groups we belong to and interact on day-to-day basis. You can include even your WhatsApp groups. I mean, we will be amazed to realize how much we are dependent on groups. Our social behavior and personalities are shaped by groups to which we belong to. Forming, joining and distinguishing groups has a number of advantages. Now, groups helps us to make a sense of our world and to coordinate more effectively, mutually benefit social exchange. Now, we join groups because they enable us to attain certain goals and interest which they hold in common. Well, the purpose of groups will be fulfilled successfully only if they function effectively, and also group situations acquire such a power to either enhance our performance or sometimes even inhibit our performance, and even make us contribute less in group tasks when individual efforts cannot be evaluated. So, let's learn about group functions and how our performance is affected by us, by groups, and sometimes we are not even aware of it. Now, group functions. Now, group exist for variety of reasons and have different methods for pursuing their purpose. Though some functions of groups may vary depending on the types of groups, often several of the functions which I am going to share now are performed within a group. Now, the first function of a group, can you guess what is the major thing which has to take place in a group? That is communication. Now, this is one of the major functions to ensure that the group achieve its goals. Now, amongst group members, communication should exist. Now, the communication can be both formal and informal communication. Now, formal communication is used to convey rules, regulations and to be followed within the group, and also for providing feedback. I mean, formal communication ensures that there is a discipline maintained within a group. Information gaps created in formal communication system are filled by informal communication channels. It's not that always informal communication is gossiping. Even informal communication promotes healthy interpersonal relationships among group members. It speeds up the flow of information among the group members. Now, the second important function is group decision making. Now, decision making is the most fundamental aspect for effective group function. Now, group decisions may involve assimilating a huge amount of information, then exploring many different ideas and choosing the best alternatives. Now, group decision making in most circumstances is more effective than individual decision making, as decision makers are many, so they can collect more information upon which their decisions are based. As a member of a group, individuals has to sometimes compromise on their choices and stick to group decision though they don't like it. Well, sometimes even group may arrive at taking extreme decisions and tend to be biased, which is referred to as group polarization, and that might lead to risky shift phenomena. Now, the third important function is roles allotment. Now, groups expect their members to perform certain roles or behaviors. In formal groups, these roles are defined by their job titles and positions, whereas in informal groups, they are actually defined by their expectations and perceptions of a significant other group members. Now, the role can be broadly categorized, and these roles, I would say, can be categorized into three types. The first one is task-oriented roles. Now, task roles are designed with the aim to reach the agreed upon goals of the group. Now, these roles include information seeking from others and considering others' members' opinion, whereas there is a second category which is relation-oriented roles. Now, these roles are meant for maintaining harmony and peace between the members and compromising among members if any tension takes place, providing positive response for members' contribution to encourage them also include in these roles. Then comes the third category, self-oriented roles. Now, in these roles, members are expected to do something for themselves. Here they are focused on themselves. So, these roles may or may not support their formal task-oriented roles. In such roles, sometimes, they may even include being dominant by displaying behaviors like, lack of respect and cutting off other members or making others scapegoat and blaming them. All these things can include. Now, coming to the fourth important function is conforming to group norms. Now, group norms are acceptable standards or expectations that's shared by group members. Norms have powerful influence on individual performance. Now, members perform as the group norms provide. So, now you may get doubt, like, as why do members conform to the group? Why should they, follow these norms? Well, members voluntarily conform to norms as they want to be accepted by the groups. It is a desire to retain and strengthen group membership makes the member conform to group norms, and also rewards like esteem, recognition, appreciation, and even acceptance and social satisfaction. These are the things which make members conform to group norms. And the fifth major function is leadership. Yes, we need a strong person who can lead a group. So, to execute a group function smoothly, someone in the group is expected to take a lead and responsibility. In formal groups, an individual is given the leadership based on their status and position, whereas in informal groups, the leaders emerge by common consent of group members and often suggestions to direct the group activities. Now, leaders provide unity of action to group efforts. For example, you can take your own classmates. Some of them are declared as a leader by your own lecturer, whereas some of your friends might have that natural tendency to take a lead and help others, and they eventually become informal leaders. Now, they build group image and fulfill their social needs by strengthening solidarity of a group members. So, these are the 5 significant functions for a group to smoothly go ahead and achieve its goals. So, now let's discuss groups and individual performance. So, by now, as we are familiar with the concept of groups and its functions, it's not a surprise for us with the fact that, as a member of a group, our behavior is influenced by other members of a group. Perhaps much more surprising is the fact that often we are strongly affected by mere presence of others, even if we and they are not part of a formal group. Yes, you are probably already familiar with such effects from your own experience. For instance, you're sitting alone in a room, okay, and you're studying. You may sit in any way you find comfortable, including putting your feet on the furniture, but just think, if a stranger enters the room, all this may change. I mean, you will probably refrain from doing some things and you might have done when you're alone, and you may change many aspects of your behavior. Even though you don't know this person and are not directly interacting with him or her. So clearly, we are often affected by mere presence of others, and this phenomena is explained by social facilitation. Now, let me ask you something else. When do you put your maximum efforts while doing a task? I am repeating again, when do you put your maximum efforts while doing a task? Is it when you work alone, or is it when you work in a group? Well, I think I might get three possible answers from you. One is, you may say when you work alone, and the second is you may say when you work in a group, or if you're diplomatic, you might say third answer that it will be in both scenarios. But research says we may not give our best when our efforts are not specifically evaluated while working in groups, and this tendency is referred to as social loafing. So now we are going to discuss two interesting and important phenomena called social facilitation and social loafing. So now first let's discuss how social facilitation, that is mere presence of others, affect our behavior. So let me give you an scenario. Imagine that you have to give a speech in class, okay, and that you're preparing for this important performance. Now you repeatedly practiced your speech alone. Now finally that big day arrives and you walk out on the stage to find a larger audience seated, okay. Now there is waiting to hear you. How will you do? Maybe there would be two possibilities, like times when we have been nervous about and performing in front of others, and some of us even might have choked when the time have arrived, whereas others might have really did their best and their abilities came out best when they were performing in front of audience. Well, evidence from several different studies confirm that mere presence of others can affect our performance, sometimes positively and sometimes negatively, and this is exactly called social facilitation. Now let me define this concept so that you get much clarity. So an improvement in the performance of well learned and easy task, and the deterioration in the performance of poorly learned difficult task in the mere presence of members of the same species. Number one point to notice, it is saying that a well learned task is performed well in the presence of others, whereas the task which is not well learned is performed poorly in the mere presence of others. So this clarity you should remember to understand the concept of social facilitation. Now you probably experience some of social facilitation actions in your own life or witnessed them among a people you know or those in the public spheres. Let me give some examples. A musician, actor, or a performance, it becomes more energized by having an audience and does a better performance, or finding that you do better work if you go to a library rather than if you stay at home to study, or a weightlifter who is able to lift heavier weights when doing it in front of others versus doing it alone. So an early psychological experiment by Norman 𝗵𝗵𝗏 addressed this question. Though it was not in the context of competition, 𝗵𝗵𝗏 first studied bicycle racing by looking at the records from the Cycling Association, and he noticed a curious phenomena whereby cyclists who were racing against others performed better than those who trying to beat their own times. Now 𝗵𝗵𝗏 was fascinated by the idea and went on to study the same concept among children doing a fishing reel task. Now his results showed that out of 40 children, half worked faster than competing with other children, 1/4 worked more slowly, and 1/4 showed equal performance. Though the findings were not satisfactory. His study paved the way for many other psychologists to study the phenomena. And finally, the reason causing the phenomena of social facilitation was given by Robert. Yes, he offered a derived theory of social facilitation which states that the presence of others increase physiological arousal, which automatically energizes dominant response which are habitual in that context. Just imagine you attended a party, okay, and your friends asked you to perform something. What you would do? If you're good at singing, you would sing rather than playing a piano which you don't know, right? So it's a natural tendency that we often perform the task in which we are good at rather than in which we are bad at. It means that we are comfortable in focusing on the task that we are well learned. When we are aroused compared to the tasks which are difficult to us when others are witnessing our performance. The best illustration for this explanation is the performance of athletes who improve their performance in the presence of audience. You can take cricketers, you can take any other athlete performance. Mere presence of others is there. Our performance usually, when arousal takes place, if you are doing a dominant response, then you would perform good. So, social presence produce an acquired arousal, that is drive, based on evaluation apprehension. Now let's understand what is social loafing. A group of people are rowing or a group of people are playing tug of war. So in this, a group of people together assuming responsibility. So definitely if you're playing alone, you will take whole burden onto your shoulders. But when you're doing it with a group, you might not, you might share your responsibilities. Do you think everyone will pitch in? Definitely not, right? So some will contribute, by taking much more load than while some may pretend to be rowing, very hard as they are doing. This pattern is quite common in situations where group perform, and this is known as additive tasks. Now these are the ones in which the contribution of each and every member are combined into a single group. So now you might be thinking that why do we loaf in groups? Well, Russell concluded that there are three broad reasons that why do we loaf when we working in a group. The first one is output equity. So to maintain equity, we avoid being a sucker, so we loaf too. And the second reason, evaluation apprehension. We worry about being evaluated by others. And the third thing is matching to standard. Often we do not have a clarity or clear sense of a group standards or norms. So we hang back and we loaf. Some useful techniques to reduce social loafing. The first, the most obvious way to reduce social loafing is involves making the output effort of each participant readily identified. And the second thing would be groups can reduce social loafing by increasing group members' commitment to successful tasks. So performance pressure towards working hard will serve them to offset the temptation to engage in social loafing. Coming to the third technique, social loafing, it can also be reduced by increasing the apparent importance or value of a task. And the fourth, people are less likely to loaf if they are giving some kind of standard of performance, either in terms of how much others are doing or their own past performance. It is nothing but a sort of feedback. Now, as we are familiar with both the concept called social facilitation and social loafing, let's try to compare both the concepts from evaluational perspective. Let's take a help of this illustration. So if you see on the top, social facilitation happens when you are apprehensive and when your work is noticed. So because you're performing singly, you know that you will be apprehensive that your performance will be evaluated, and that leads to, social facilitation. Whereas coming to social loafing, you know that you are the not only person, there are many who are working and your performance will not be evaluated, you will engage in social loafing. So this illustration will also help you to understand and differentiate between social facilitation and loafing from evaluation perspective. Well, let's conclude this session. So we covered the major functions of a group, which includes communication, decision making, role allotment, conforming to group norms, and leadership in group. Then we discussed how mere presence of others sometimes enhance and sometimes inhibit our performance, which is called social facilitation. Later, we try to understand why people loaf in additive tasks compared to individual allotted tasks and the way to reduce social loafing. So I hope this session help you in understanding why our performance knowingly or unknowingly affected by the presence of others and the significance of group functions.